All right, let's get started. Welcome to episode 6 of Leaders in Conversation, where we explore humanness at work with big-hearted leaders in conversations that build clarity to solve today's business challenges. I am your co-host, Ken Blackwell.
Oh, and I'm Amanda Cookson. Hello.
And this week we are speaking with Jules Roberts, who is going to talk to us about the transformative power of deep listening. And hopefully you're watching us here live, either on Zoom or on Facebook. And we want to introduce our guest today. So I'll get us started, but first, maybe I'll do Amanda's bit of saying hello to our folks who might be watching in chat or participating here live. Please use the chat feature. Make sure you send it to all panelists and attendees so we can see your questions. As they pop up, please type those in. That's a great source for us to be able to then ask Jules those questions that you've got that you want to have answered. So we are going to jump off and thank all our folks for joining us. And we're going to introduce our guest, Jules Roberts, who is an executive coach and therapist. As senior leader in Starbucks, she masterminded bringing the franchise to the UK. Through her career, she's worked with a diverse range of people, from prisoners to politicians, and we're going to have to ask about both of those. Jules will talk us through the journey she undertook and the power she unlocked using deep listening practices. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to get us started with our first question, I think.
Great. Oh, good. I can see me. I was worried. I'd disappeared. And is Jules back on camera as well? Have we got everyone?
Yes, we're all back.
Great, it's just my view then. So before we get started, sort of talking to Jules and understanding more about that magical, transformative power of deep listening, what I'd really love everybody to do is just to kind of say hi in the chat, tell us where you're from, and also what we'd love to know is what gets in the way for you from listening. So what stops you from listening to others? So while you are busy typing that into the chat. Jules, you and I have known each other for many years. We trained as coaches together. And one of the stories that Jules has told me that I find absolutely fascinating, why I really wanted Jules to be part of this Leaders in Conversation series, is her experience working at Starbucks. So at the time that Jules was a senior leader there, she was also training as a therapist, and she sort of stumbled upon, I think, a way of leading and a way of transforming others by bringing in some of that sort of practice and way of being into her stuff. So Jules, I wondered if you could step everyone through your story and what happened when you brought in that different kind of listening.
Yeah, hi everybody. Hi Ken, hi Amanda. It was probably something that I had a natural bias to anyway, in as much as seeing us all as individuals. And the reason why I wanted to go to learn more about therapy and more around people and how people's brains worked was because I could see that we each had our own different view of the world, but if we were given the conditions to be able to share that view, then it meant some of the teams that we worked with were hugely powerful. I was slightly different, I would say, to most of the people that were working at that point in time in the UK, in as much as we're quite focused in on P&Ls and all of the things that you would imagine a leader would be interested in, whereas for me it was always people first, not second, and leadership second, not first. But through getting a greater understanding of psychology, I understood that it was pretty much quite straightforward. You know, we wanted to know where we belonged, we wanted to feel safe, we wanted to be able to feel trusted, we wanted to be listened and heard, and we wanted to know what it was that people need us to do, and are we doing it well, and if we are, let's celebrate it and let's be recognised for it. So it was all of the conditions that we needed as a human being to thrive. And once I'd kind of worked that out, it was like, oh, okay, well, that kind of takes up a lot of the way that I like to think and I like to be with people. I'm going to do more and see where we go. And yeah, it was interesting, an interesting journey.
So we've already got a couple quick questions from chat, and there's a little bit of a theme here. And so, you know, Anne says, "I'm caught emotionally by something, and I can miss the other person's intention. What can I do there?" And Dee, who's saying, my own thoughts stop me from listening. So just at a kind of a basic level, how do we overcome some of these basic things that get in the way?
It's really interesting. Stephen Covey identified that there are 5 different levels of listening. The first one is relatively straightforward. It's ignoring, so we're not listening at all. The next one is pretending. So, gosh, that's terrible. When I think of my teenage daughters when they were younger and they were just no longer, yep. Not listening at all. And then we move into a selective listening, then we go into attentive, and then we go into empathic. And empathic really is the best form of listening, in as much as I hear you, I see you, I recognize what it is you're saying, I feel what it is you're saying, and I'm providing you the space to actually do that without any judgment at all. I'm just here to do that. But one of your other listeners there is right. So much gets in the way of us actually listening. We're so caught up with our own internal dialogue. What do they mean? Oh God, I'm really hungry. I should have had lunch before I had this conversation. Lots of other distractions. Do I actually really want to listen to this? Do I want to? My brain, it means I'm going to have to work really hard. And not only am I going to have to listen to her, but I'm going to have to show to that person that I'm listening as well. And if I actually listen to her in a way that I'm capable of listening, she's going to expect me to listen like that every single time I speak to her. So actually, there's so many different things running. It is quite simple, but you can imagine, if you've not actually given it a great deal of thought, how do we ever listen to anybody? Truly, how do we?
Well, and it seems like it's, potentially such a lot of work, right, to do this. And so then there's some discretion, some decision making around like, do I want to go full on listen right now? But it also seems like it's a lot of what's going on with us, right? So I don't know, maybe you can talk a little bit about what is it that needs to be going on with us internally to make us even capable of being in that place where we then might listen? Because if we think about business in particular, there's a lot of stresses, strains. We're getting pulled in lots of different directions. There's lots of reasons for us not to listen, for us to prioritize other things, to get locked in our heads. What sort of insights do you have around the things that we can do to better position ourselves, I guess, to listen when we need to?
I mean, the common thread between a leader and a therapist and a coach is providing the right environment. If we provide the right environment for our people and we see them as humans first, then actually we can allow them and support them to do their best. And also part of that is supporting them to do their best thinking. So to attend, to actually turn up, to be present, to be open with no judgment as to what's going to be said, to be open with your own agenda, slightly open, but closed off enough so that your agenda doesn't come out, to actually not interrupt, to allow them to finish what they want to speak, to feel comfortable with the silences, that's them just thinking and trying to work great stuff out, to nod where it's appropriate, to encourage them through body language and through the way in which you actually are being with them and able to be with them, to make sure they don't feel pressurized or rushed, or that you're holding that attention and you're holding that empathic listening, and to just make sure when they're coming to the end, or if they're getting a little bit stuck, to actually say, can I share with you what I've just heard? It's the most amazing creative way of saying to somebody, I've been showing you that I've been listening, but let me actually demonstrate to you how much I have been listening.
So you've used that word, empathic listening, words a couple of times, and I just wondered if you could, for people who've maybe not come across it, who aren't sure exactly what that means, what is empathic listening, and how would you know I was doing it?
How was you doing it? Well, I would say it's about feeling. It's almost like I'm going wherever you're taking me in your thoughts. Whatever it is you're saying, I'm not just hearing it. I can sense an emotion or such a heightened interest in what it is that you're saying, and I'm on your journey with you through your thinking. And there's no way you can't take me that I'm going to feel uncomfortable going with you. If you know that I've got an understanding of what it is you're trying to say, and that there's a feeling of where you're trying to go, and an understanding of what that feeling is creating, that to me is empathic listening.
I guess it sounds like you're talking there about listening with your whole body, and that walking alongside is kind of feeling with. How do you learn to recognize what you're feeling is from what you're listening to and not your own stuff?
That is an amazing question. Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome.
It is amazing because there's almost something that I just want to say, you just got to trust yourself in that moment, in that minute, to just turn up and to just be. It's not that there's an absence of thinking in my head going on, or that I'm no longer me, because that would be ridiculous. But my intention and my focus is such that I'm here and I'm with you in that moment. And it doesn't matter what it is that where you're going to end up or where you're going to go, but the only way I can perhaps bring it to life is you could ask 2 or 3 questions and get 2 or 3 different answers, or you could ask 2 or 3 questions and actually get more. But what I'm really wanting through empathic listening is to help the person I'm listening to go deeper, to really answer those questions in a way that perhaps makes them feel a little bit vulnerable, but not uncomfortable, that allows them to get out some of those thoughts that have been going on in the head and to make sense of it and get it out. You know, what I was thinking about was, if I did this, that's going to lead to this, that's going to lead to that, it's going to lead to the other. Oh, did I actually just say that? So it's actually allowing people, by creating that condition and by actually being with them, being interested in understanding them and feeling it, to allow them to take it as far as they want to, in service of them and in service of the organisation. Because what we're able to do is unlock the intellect, unlock their capacity to think, unlock their capacity to come up with creative, great ideas that can move themselves and an organisation on.
Because that's interesting, because the next question I had in my head was, if I'm kind of a busy founder leader, I've got a truckload of stuff to do, why am I going to make this a priority? Why am I going to find time to start listening differently to others?
Because we're not employing resources, we're employing human beings. And not one of us knows the whole answer or the whole way of being, because we all have our own individual lens. So why wouldn't we want to listen to what the wonderful human beings we've employed have got to say. And as leaders, we don't need to know the answer, but we need our experts to know the answers, and we need them to be passionate and care about what it is they're doing. So to have all of that richness around you and not to hear it, or not to listen to it, or not to want to engage, feels as if it's just an amazing resource lost.
There's a brilliant question. I've got my eye keeps going over here to the chat. So there have been some really interesting questions that have been asked that I just want to dive into. I'm going to start with, I think it's Steve Holloway, who's asked, bottom line, does empathic listening improve the bottom line?
Yes. Absolutely.
On that.
The bottom line. There's no two ways about that. If you want to develop a group of like-minded people who are experts within their own field, who care about their other humans, who have got a common purpose, who connect with their customers and their communities, who feel hugely valued and listened to, whose ideas are put forward, whose creativity becomes part of the common purpose, who want to stay with us for a long time, who want to develop within an organisation because it fits their values. My goodness, Amanda, I could go on forever. Of course it has an impact on the bottom line. You know, I know Starbucks is a coffee shop, but in the UK, people would walk past 6 coffee shops to get to Derek's coffee shop.
Yeah, that is true. Okay, I've got a couple more questions in chat, if that's okay, because you know, Ken and I wanted to kind of dive into what gets in the way of listening, but I think you know, our kind of the people with us have given some really good examples and really good questions. So there's a really good one here. Again, it's from Steve. Obviously, he's my question spirit twin here. So the question is, can everybody do empathic listening? Do you need a high EQ to do it? Can it be learned?
Listening can be learned. Absolutely can be learned. When we go to school, it's maths, it's English, it's writing. We're not taught how to listen. Well, we are taught how to listen, but we're taught how to listen to your teacher, not necessarily listening to ourselves. It can absolutely be learned. There's got to be an absolute desire to want to do it, but I can give you a great example of a 14-year-old who I was coaching out in the community, and she didn't listen, and we would try and engage, and it felt really painful and really hard, and I was thinking, I'm giving you the environment and I'm giving you everything that I need to give you, what's going wrong? And she turned round after she'd been playing on her phone and said to me, I don't want to listen to you because you're not going to listen to me. And when I said to her, well, what makes you think that? She actually started crying and said, nobody's ever asked me what I think. Everybody is capable of listening. Everybody is capable of, you know, taking it from a number 3 of being a selective listener to a number 4 of being an attentive listener, from an attentive listener to an empathic listener. Absolutely. If it's important and you see it as important, we listen.
So, Jules, yes, I think there's a point at which when we get on the path, right, we can start to learn, we can start to experiment. I'm wondering for you, what was the triggering event for you to think, I need to learn to listen differently, I need to learn to listen more deeply? What was it that got you on the path? Was there a triggering event? Was there a challenge that you were facing? What got you on that path to begin with? Because I think that's what holds many of us back, is we're just maybe not aware that we need to do it, right? We haven't had that moment, right? But once we have that moment, yes, okay, things can then progress. For you, what was the thing that was that triggering initial event?
Wow. Well, you know, I say this, I hope not many people are listening. I actually got it into my own head as a leader for quite a number of years that I needed to know the answers. So I spent more time actually trying to work out the answers and be fancy about it, in as much as how I could do it. And that it was my idea, because if I was the leader, it had to be my idea. It couldn't be anybody else's. And actually, if it was anybody else's, then my imposter would kick in, because it would be, well, perhaps they're better than you and I'm in the wrong job. So, yeah, Amanda, I saw the way the lip went. That's exactly how I felt. You know, it was that thing of, oh my Lord, what is going on with you, girl? So my non-willingness to listen at times was because it would trigger me. It would make me think, oh my God, do I know what I'm doing? I completely lost sight of the fact that I wasn't doing it on my own. I had this wonderful team of gifted and wonderful people who all they wanted to do was help. And I had withdrawn into myself to think that I had to come up with all the answers. So I'd stopped listening because it triggered me.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to say the what you were talking about a bit earlier when you were talking about how to listen, you know, and not that you're not thinking then. The phrase that came to my mind was that what you're doing is you're creating a bit of space in your head, right, or in your thinking for that other person to be, right, and then to,
yes,
in that space, allow things to develop. And so I think that can be scary for some folks. That creates some vulnerability to have to open up and make that space so someone can climb into your brain as well, right? And occupy some of that time there. So what was it that helped you overcome that fear, that because I think we all have some sense of that. We all have some sense of, oh, you know, that I haven't done that before. That's a bit scary. What was it that enabled you to conquer that fear?
I selected somebody that I recognized was gentle, and I allowed that person to step in, and that person stepped out, and I recognized I wasn't damaged. I was actually felt quite euphoric, in as much as two minds being better than one and being more creative. And also some of that feeling that I was leading on my own and I was alone was then not the truth. It was false. I wasn't alone. I was never alone. I had created this aloneness, which then became very real, and I could touch it. Whereas when somebody gently stepped into the space and they allowed me to gently step into their space, it was nice and it was powerful, and we actually did some really good work.
There's some kind of comments in the chat, and what I want to try and make sure we do is to kind of get to as many kind of things that get in people's way as possible. So there's been a bit of a thread and a theme of a couple of people who said that what gets in the way for them is their own thoughts. So Dee mentioned this, and a couple of other people have kind of said that when they get, I guess that could either be about making an assumption about what somebody's going to say, or a fear of what's going to come next. So, and I know it's something that I sometimes struggle with, is just that sort of, I guess, that terror of, you know, in an open space, anything could happen. And how do you deal with that?
I think if you go into that space, recognizing that if you're going in as a listener, that's all that other person needs you to do is to listen and to provide that great environment. If I'm not going into that space thinking I've got to listen, I've got to deal with everything, I've got to write everything down, I've got to action everything, I've got to come up with the answers, I've got to make sure that that person's all right, then I can imagine, and you know, I have been in times where it feels overwhelming. But when I'm going into that state, I'm going into that state to listen. So it actually takes a load of pressure off me, because all I need to do is create the right environment so that I can listen. They're not at that moment expecting me to sort everything out or to solve everything that's wrong. I'm going in as a listener.
Jonathan, Edward Bradley asks about sort of the physical aspect of that, right? I think we've been talking about maybe the mental and emotional aspects of creating the right environment. And he asks, is there something about moving into that attentive, empathic state for deep listening that benefits from physical grounding, right? So he's thinking breathing, centering, posture. Can you speak to maybe the physical aspects of creating the right environment?
Yeah, Amanda, you know this, 15 minutes before every session that I go into with all of my wonderful clients is my 15 minutes of grounding. It's my lowering my breath, it's lowering my blood pressure, it's getting my head into the right mind state as to the role that I'm actually going into, whether that be coach or therapist or listener or facilitator or whatever it is. And also just allowing me, if I've worked with that client before, to actually just bring and recall, where they're at, the journey that they're on, so that I'm ready to step into that journey with them as we continue to move on through coaching or through therapy. But definitely when somebody is speaking as a listener, not only have you got to make sure that you're in the right space and feeling grounded, but also being aware that everything that you do will be at some level watched. They are, the speaker is looking for the listener. Are they looking at me, or are they nodding at the right time? Are they breathing easily? Are they twitching around and contorted? Is their nose going up at the front, which shows a little bit of disgust? So everything that we're doing is being watched at some level, some subconscious level, because we're just amazing, amazing things.
Can I make a terrible confession?
Yeah.
So when I used to run a big team, I had a couple of people on my team who, if they could answer a question in 1,000 words, they would. And so I would have this much time. I'd want everyone to be involved, because in my heart I wanted to be a good person, but when their mouth would open, my heart would sink, and all of those non-verbal cues for enough already would not be recognized. How can you manage listening so that there is turn taking? And I think from a therapeutic setting, I get that, we're going to take a breath, we're going to center ourselves, we're not here to solve problems, but in the office, often, we've got 30 minutes to solve this issue, let's hear all the ideas and go. And what do you do with
Well, if it's a really good question. There's more than one answer, I think. I think one way is you allow the team to work that out, because they are also very aware of that. And perhaps it's less and easier to forgive your team member than what it is your boss, because as your boss or as a leader, it's got the potential to have a bigger impact on you if you're seeing and dismissing. And also it's working out where that's coming from. Is it coming from a place of anxiety? Is it coming because this person has got low self-esteem and needs to be able to have this airtime to make themselves feel better? But sometimes it's nothing other than I will have done in a break to go over and say, you know what, Amanda, I hear you. There's a lot that we need to do to go through the agenda. So can you and I take some of that offline?
Yes. I'm just thinking, I was trained actually in when you want someone to stop talking, you put your pen down, you then pick up your papers and do this, and then you start doing, I'm getting up, and nothing would stop.
So knowing now as a coach, what would you say now then? Presumably you'd leave your paper and your pen on the desk, but what would you say?
Thank you for that question. I think I would contract at the start. So contract is like a Ponzi word for non-coaches who are listening, which is where you make an agreement with everybody. So I think I would probably say at the start how much time we had.
Oh, I've lost you, Amanda.
Oh, looks like we have. So he's talking about contracting, and there now she's back. We lost you for a moment, Amanda. That's okay.
Oh, I'm
We're just
here.
starting to talk about contracting.
So contracting is important. And I guess even as leaders in meetings, we contract in as much as we've got this period of time to cover this, 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 and this. Again, I utilised the whole time because there were certain people in my team that were very precise. So when it was coming close to, this is our 5 minutes, we've had our 5 minutes. So it can be done by the leader direct, but I think a kinder way of doing it the first few times is to actually bring it to their attention outside of that meeting, but using contracting and using the whole team to keep us in line is a great way.
There's another question from Dan Long from Cork. Hello, Dan. Who says that what gets in the way for him in listening is about not being able to make a connection with that person. So I guess there's that interesting thing, isn't there, in our brains, that if we think someone is like us, we process what they say the same way as our own thoughts. If you think they're not like us, it's a whole lot of hard work. So what's your kind of best thinking, Jules, for dealing with people who instinctively we don't have that level of warmth towards?
Well, we're more alike than we're dissimilar. And sometimes when we find it difficult to connect, it may be that on a subconscious level, we've actually recognized something in ourselves. So there's an element for me when that happens, I get quite curious. What the devil's going on? But I think until we actually give people the opportunity to be heard, or we allow ourselves to recognise that they're equally still a member of our team, we're never going to be able to build a relationship. And if you can't build a relationship and trust, then that's never going to move forward. So as a leader, as I said, because it's my one of my roles to create the environment for us to be able to trust and support and work with each other, I know for a fact that I don't have to like people to be able to create deep empathic listening. I know that for a fact.
So how do you do it? What do you say something to yourself, or how do you get to that point? Because I have a place that's sort of made out of plastic, and if I don't like someone, it's kind of everywhere.
Okay, you're putting me on the spot here, but
we're going to know your secrets. I'm going to find she hates me. We've been friends.
Well, and maybe another question that goes along with this that Steve Holloway was asking about empathy and how you maintain your status as leader, and something that I'm curious about too, that maybe is another way to another angle for this question is, how can we listen empathically? How can we have that connection empathically as a leader without then crossing the line and having to be friends or it be personal? Because I think people struggle with not wanting to step into being empathic to someone because somehow that now is creating a personal rather than business relationship with someone, right? And they want to kind of try and maintain that line. And I think that's where many people struggle. So maybe that's another way to look at this too. So how does one have that line between the empathy and then the distance that you need to have as a leader?
So I may not like somebody, but I can absolutely identify numerous things that I value about that person or recognize that that person brings. And that's the way that I've squared it in my head. It's not necessary that I like everybody. It's nice if I like them, but it's not necessary. What's important is that I value what it is that they have to bring and their superpower, their skill that they have. And about stepping the line, I've never stepped the line. There's always been this respect, whereas I respect my team and well, I'm saying this, hopefully they've respected me as the leader. And there's almost like an invisible line of where we don't push, because I can't be the best I'm capable of being and hold that environment if I become too emotionally connected. But empathic listening to me is not taking it from a relationship that shouldn't be. We should be in relationship with our other human beings in work, irrespective of our position. We should be able to listen compassionately and provide non-judgmental environments. So I'm in a relationship with every single person that I've ever worked with. Is it in an appropriate relationship? No, but is it a relationship? Absolutely. And are they strong and meaningful? Absolutely. So I would say, if you're not in relationship with your people, get in relationship with your people, because they're amazing. And the more and the more that you get from being in those relationships is endless.
Love that distinction.
Something that popped into my head, which a lot of clients have been talking to me about, is this kind of almost like their discovered secret, that their flatmates or their family have heard them on calls, in Zoom meetings, and then they said to them afterwards, "You didn't sound like you. Oh my gosh, is that your work voice?" And I just wonder what your thinking is about that, that persona of "this is work me," and how that then gets in the way of, I guess, being honest about us and our needs, and also in terms of then what we're listening for.
Yeah. I mean, as a leader and as a coach and therapist, again, so many similarities. You want everybody to turn up. You want them to turn up in their full sense. You know, I want the whole thing. I don't want part of thing. I don't want an 8 to 8. I've not hired. I've hired the whole thing. And you don't want them to bring a mask. You don't want them to bring this persona, you know. "Oh, hi, Amanda. How are you? How are things? So how's business and how are sales figures?" Yeah, I mean, all of that is amazing. But actually, I want to be in relationship with you and be able to have a conversation that is meaningful, and meaningful for you as a human, meaningful for you within the organisation and me within the organisation, because we've got a job to do. But actually, I want to meet you. I don't want anybody else. I want you. That's who I'm in relationship with. So when I've seen that, especially in the first few months when somebody joins a new organisation, tell them. Say to them, "Come on, let's have a coffee. Talk about it."
Because I'm just really intrigued. So I know when I first started my career, I definitely, work me and me was so different that if I was going out after work, I would get completely changed. And, you know, what makes us have that huge separation? What's kind of driving underneath it?
I think it's for me, it's society. It was expectation. It was about, if you do this job, this is how you behave and dress. If you do this job, you know, if you were working with young children, perhaps you could be a little bit more trendy or a little bit more open. But if you were a lawyer or you were in corporate business, this is how. I mean, when I first started business, I was called Miss Lambert and then Mrs. Roberts. You know, they never used my first name for years and years and years, probably the first 2 decades, which was ridiculous. So I think we become institutionalized, in as much as that's just how it is, and we become part of the system, and this is what the system does, and I want to comply with the system because I want this job or I want to do this work, so I do it, and it becomes part of who you think you are. How wonderful, though, for people to have, you know, for me to have you, Amanda, for me to have you, Ken, and have the whole of you, you know, your humour, which will cause my serotonin to kick in so that it makes me feel happier. You know, the bit about you which is caring and supportive, the bit about you that will listen to others, not just the bit, you know, the bit that will help your co-worker to really understand what it is that they're trying to do, create creativity. Why wouldn't we want the whole people? I don't just want a fraction, I want everything.
But I think that some of that is more about maybe the individual not giving it than perhaps the organization wanting it.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, don't we all go to work to do our absolute best? Don't we all want to feel inclusive, part of? Don't we, don't we want to be a part of the tribe, a part of the pack? Isn't that, fundamental as to how we were designed and how we were brought into the world to be? Even from a small child, if we don't have our needs met, we're not going to survive. That's why we cry when the caregiver goes out of sight, because I don't know if they're coming back and whether I'm going to survive. So you can create an environment where people can show up and be themselves. I think it's more that people can't be themselves, or they choose not to be themselves because there isn't the psychological safety and trust within an organisation, or it's not consistent enough. It's a little bit rocky. Some days it's okay, some days it's not quite so okay.
And so that almost begs that chicken and egg question, right? So if there's a safety, then people are open, which creates more safety, right? But if there's a lack of safety, then people are going to close down, which of course feeds on itself. From a leadership standpoint, and maybe you can speak some to your experience at Starbucks or elsewhere, what are some things that people can do to start priming the pump in the right direction to create that psychological safety, to create the environment so that we can then start to apply some of these listening skills?
So I would always say that it starts with the leader. So, for me to show my vulnerability, to be authentic, to acknowledge when I get it wrong, to ask other people's opinions, to thank people for their contribution, and especially their contribution towards supporting me on a personal level. To demonstrate trust of them in as much as I trust you. And part of the listening is a huge part, and asking questions and listening is huge around making sure that that foundation is in place. And then that absolute consistency. Because once I got over myself and I moved myself out of the way because I was the problem, and I realized that I had this rich, talented people, it was amazing that they always wanted to help, but the only person that was stopping them from helping was me. And I didn't have an awareness that I was the one that was in the way. So it's almost, I wanted what I wanted, but I didn't quite know how to get it. But the minute I relaxed into it and actually showed my human side, the magic happened. People accepted me, and yeah.
So I can't imagine a scenario or an environment where trust might be more difficult or tenuous than dealing with prisoners.
Yeah.
Can you share with the audience just what it was you were doing and how you were using listening in that context? Because I imagine, when we talk about safety, there's just going to be a whole lot going on with someone who's incarcerated that is going to have a whole lot of internal barriers for them. What did you do to overcome all of that, and how did you use listening in that context?
As I said, I alluded to earlier, some people have never been listened to. Some people have just been barked at, shouted at, told what to do, treated poorly. And the people in that position have been accepting of that because perhaps that's what they deserve, or perhaps that's what the world is about, if there's nothing else to balance it from. The big thing, in as much as similarities in business as what there is within prisons, is that people will test you, and they will continue to test you. Is this real? Is this the real thing? If things get bad, is this going to be okay if I say this? Are they actually going to squirm and think they can't work with me anymore? So it was to actually stand firm, grounded. If they try to push you away, or they try to shock you, or they try to wobble you or make you feel uncomfortable, you just stood, because actually most people in their world will have left. or gone, or decided they were too much or too hard, or, you know, this person's not worth it. So actually, all I did, relatively straightforward, just stood and went, you know what, there's nothing you can say that's going to upset me. There's nothing you can say that's going to push me away. We've got some brilliant time to do some great thinking and work out where the future goes. And I'm here on that journey with you. And there's nothing that you can say that's going to make me feel as if I shouldn't be here with you. And after a couple of sessions of that same message, all of a sudden they sort of go, oh, okay, all right, fair enough then, we'll have a try and see how this goes. And we've had the most amazing results. I've met the most amazing people. And I've got to say, from that part of my career, I've also learned some wonderful things which will stay with me for a lifetime. So yeah, don't let people push you away. They're skilled at it, absolutely skilled at it. Keep going back. What they're saying to you is not always what they mean.
That sounds like fantastic advice also for any parent.
Yeah.
Particularly of teenagers.
Yeah.
Having survived that myself, there's the resilience of keep coming back. But I think also as a leader, right, to be able to keep coming back and to show that consistency, because I think there is, you know, probably some well-earned distrust that people have of organizations and you know, wanting to make sure, yeah, you're going to be there tomorrow. This is going to be a lasting thing, not a flavor of the month.
So I'm just keeping an eye, Jules, on the time, because time is disappearing. It's like magic time. So there were a couple of things that we haven't talked about that I'm hoping we can squeeze in before you go. So one of them is having difficult conversations. So it's a hot topic for a lot of the people I work with, and you know, for them, possibly the most difficult conversation might be saying to someone, your code sucks, sort it. So you have, you know, as our earlier conversation kind of highlighted, had some really, really, really difficult conversations. What is your kind of top tips and advice for people on how to have effective, difficult conversations?
Okay, top tip number one, don't ignore difficult conversations. Difficult conversations become more difficult, and conversations become difficult conversations. So timing is really, really, really important. Going back to what one of your earlier audience members said, you know, actually get yourself grounded. This is not personal, so don't make it personal. If you make it personal, you're going to be less likely to go ahead with it, and it's going to feel very personal from the other side. Think about their intentions. What actually happened, and what are the intentions, and what are the behaviours, or what were the behaviours that led to wherever they've got to. And actually, if you feel that you're highly being triggered emotional, try and take the emotion back, because it wasn't personal. When you've worked out what the intention was, then that hopefully gives you a firm foundation to actually have that conversation and start thinking about, where do I want to take this conversation? And also, what's the outcome that you're looking for? Is the outcome just to bring something to somebody's attention? Is the outcome to do something with that? Is the outcome that it could lead to disciplinary? Is the outcome that it could lead to them actually leaving the organisation? And the way in which you actually approach it, if you've actually done some really good thinking, and you're not just doing it based on a hunch or stomach turning, or because you've been triggered or you're feeling frustrated or angry, and you're actually doing it from a time of calm, as calm as you're able to get to, and realizing that when you're delivering difficult conversations, you do not need to be stern. You do not need to stop caring for that person, or recognize that what I'm going to do is going to be really challenging. So do it with kindness and compassion.
So Jules, Steve has got one for you then. He says, go on then, Jules. How would you give feedback on a personal hygiene issue?
Thanks, Steve. Well, I've actually had to do that. And I went to Boots, which is a pharmacy store, and I bought some specific deodorant for people who get particularly sweaty. And this person I sat down with and said, look, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to find it a bit embarrassing. I don't find it embarrassing, but I have been to Boots and I've bought you some deodorant. And the person went, why? And I said, because trust me, I think the deodorant you're currently using isn't working as effectively. And it took me quite a while to find a deodorant that worked really well for me. And the person said, am I smelling? And I said, a little bit. And they said, okay. Have you told anybody else about this? I went, absolutely not. And they went, okay, can I take that or do you want some money for it? And I said, no, take it, off you go. So thanks for that, Steve. It is incredibly difficult, but what I couldn't do was have that human being wandering around, having absolutely no knowledge, because I had a relationship. I was in a relationship with her. So I've never told that to you, Amanda. So your deodorant must be working really well.
Close, good one, good one. The other thing that we've not had time for that I'd like to squeeze in is that you often talk about bringing out people's superpowers, and you've used that phrase today. And so what I'd love you to do, because we literally have less than 10 minutes left, so time is, how can you help people listening, watching, find their superpower? Do we all have superpowers, and how can we help other people find their superpowers?
So every single human being on this earth has a superpower, and all we need to do is listen, watch, see the results, see the joy, whatever it is. A superpower doesn't have to be I'm great at maths, or I'm amazing at speaking, or I've got absolute bucket loads of emotional intelligence. One of the 13-year-old boys I was working with, do you know what his superpower was? Kindness. He was the kindest, gentlest soul. He was kind, and he used that kindness in school. That was his superpower. When he recognised he was kind, because he was always told he was a naughty boy, he actually walked out of, it was almost as if I could see the cape trailing behind him as he walked out of the room. So if we go through our world looking for great things of great people, and that's our mindset, so we're looking for superpowers, they're everywhere, absolutely everywhere. They're on every corner, and they're in every conversation. And when we are aware of our own superpower, then we can utilize that in service of every human being we come into contact with. And it can help us grow our enthusiasm, our self-esteem, our belonging, who we are. It's like magic. It's like having a wand. And I would say that if you don't know what your own superpower is, then dig deep. And if you still don't know what your superpower is, go out and ask 6 people what they value the most of you, about you, what you do that makes them realize that it's you. You know, what is it about Amanda? What is it about Ken? People will tell you. Then connect it in, back into who you are. You all have got a superpower. Use it. It's there. It's a free resource.
Well, and from the world of improv, one of the tenets that they teach you when you're working with a scene partner is just to have the mindset of your partner as a genius, right? To have that as a base level approach. And it is amazing what changes when you have that as a base assumption, because then you truly do discover, and you just bring more positivity, more energy to things as they bring it. If you come in with I'm not really sure about this person, you know, the scene never takes off, right? So being able to come in, with that assumption of, so what is this person's superpower? I know it's there, I just need to discover it, is a great place to start and build a relationship.
So in our last moments,
yes, we've been running down on time.
We are, I don't know where it's gone. Jules, I would like you to give everybody one thing, one simple thing that we could do that would make us better listeners.
It can also be two things.
Can it be two things? Can it be two things?
Force the choice.
It would be to listen with the positive intentions and to utilize the opportunity to tell the person you're listening to what you've actually heard.
That's lovely. We have a very exciting time in the Cookson household, and we were taught non-violent responding, and literally as you're listening to your children, you repeat back what they've said, because they're so triggered that they don't know you've heard them unless they hear you say it, which I just think is really, really wonderful. Very wise. And Judy's just shared that she thinks that your superpower is your amazing ability to see the best in people.
Thank you. I'll take that.
Nice.
Very nice.
Awesome. Jules, thank you for joining us today, for this amazing conversation, for sharing your expertise and your insights around listening. It's so rich. We're going to have to go back and look at the recording, which will be out, and just kind of dive through all of this. So there's a lot of nuggets there that we maybe even glossed over. But the power that gets unlocked when you really do truly listen to somebody, I think is absolutely amazing. So thank you for joining us. This was the episode 6 of our first series here. We are actually going to be doing an after party. What are we calling this?
Bonus all-star.
All-stars. All-stars.
Yeah.
So next week we have, I think I had the slide. I thought I had the slide. Maybe I don't. Well, I won't share it then. A list of everybody who's been on the program. So come back next week. This time, we're going to have our all-star extravaganza. We've invited all of our guests back from all 6 episodes to have one kind of amazing conversation. There's been a lot of overlap. There's been a lot of themes that have been running through all of this about the nature of work, about building connection, how to have a more human workplace. And I'm really looking forward to just how amazing that is going to be. So please come and join us again next week. And we will see you all there. Amanda, any last words?
Yes, if you want to connect with Jules, the best way to do that, I believe, is LinkedIn.
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. Do that. And yes, if you'd love to connect with us as well, please do that. Thanks so much for watching and being with us today. And we're looking forward to it, seeing you for our wrap up next week. Take care.